Welcome to the local campaign, and thank you for joining us for our debate today in Ottawa Centre. In just a moment, I will introduce the candidates who are running in the October 21st election. But first, I'll explain how the debate is going to work today. We're going to start with opening statements. Each candidate will have 1 minute to speak to you, the voters. The order for those opening statements was drawn at random just a few minutes ago. After that, we'll move into a series of debates about important local and national issues in this election campaign. In each case, I will start the discussion by directing a question to one of the candidates. That candidate will have 45 seconds to speak about that topic and answer the question. And then we'll open it up to several minutes of debate from all the candidates about that particular subject. At the end of that discussion, we'll go back to the candidate to whom the question was originally directed, and he or she will have 30 seconds to wrap up on that topic. We'll move through a number of different topics and debate them, and then at the end we'll have closing statements. We'll do those in the reverse order of the opening statement. Once again, they will be 1 minute in length. So let's meet the candidates who are here for our debate in Ottawa Centre. First, we have Marilee Sevilla, who is with the People's Party of Canada. Carol Clemenhagen is the Conservative Party candidate. Chris Jones is an independent candidate. Angela Keller Herzog is with the Green Party of Canada. Representing the Communist Party of Canada is Stuart Ryan. The Liberal candidate is Catherine Mckenna. The Libertarian Party candidate is Corrine Corcoran. And from the New Democratic Party, Emily Taman. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us. There are some other candidates who are on the ballot who are not with us. Shelby Bertrand with the Animal Protection Party of Canada, Marie Chantal Lariche from the Christian Heritage Party of Canada, and Jiang Ha Tu Vo, an independent candidate. So let's begin with the opening statements, and we'll start with Marilee Sevilla of the People's Party of Canada. Marilee Sevilla, go ahead.
Thank you. So my name is Marilee Sevilla. I'm part of the People's Party candidate for Ottawa Centre. I'm a public speaker on mental health, an LGBTQ advocate and ally, and I'm running as a taxpayer, a homeowner, a Canadian tired of reckless, irresponsible government spending and deceit. Having worked for the NDP, supported the Conservatives, I'm running as a People's Party Canada candidate to bring accountability, responsibility, and transparency. We're looking to simplify an overcomplicated tax system, ending corporate welfare, no more bailouts. The People's Party of Canada is looking to focus on Canadians with real results for today and tomorrow. For every dollar that we spend outside of our country, it's a slap to the veterans, to the seniors, to the Canadian families of all ages and backgrounds who barely are making ends meet. The People's Party is running because we know Canadians want more for today and for tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, the opening statement from Carol Clemenhagen, the Conservative candidate. Go ahead.
With a federal and a provincial government now heavily burdened by Liberal deficits, a key factor for Ottawa Centre going forward will be securing the funding for our local priorities. I want Ottawa Centre to have a strong voice in a competent and caring Conservative government, a government that advances healthcare and climate action, that fosters a strong economy, investing in basic research and infrastructure. Catherine Mckenna and Justin Trudeau talk in public relations spin. What they say does not match what they do. The incumbent Liberal MP was the only minister for Ottawa, yet showed an astounding lack of leadership on local files. We need an MP for Ottawa Centre who rallies and demonstrates leadership on local priorities, who stands up for Ottawa Centre. I'm asking for your vote for a competent and caring Conservative government.
All right, thank you. Next is an independent candidate, Chris Jones. Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
Hello, my name is Chris Jones and I'm an independent candidate. I'm formerly a CEO of a national not-for-profit organization, an advisor on Parliament Hill, and more recently the director of a program here in Westboro helping families and individuals to cope with food insecurity. I'm running in this election to promote 3 urgently needed reforms. They are: 1, measuring the full range of social and environmental costs arising from the business activities of corporations and companies conducting operations in Canada. 2, creating citizens' assemblies in every federal riding made up of 30 randomly chosen citizens to discuss and debate on a monthly basis issues of critical national importance. 3, banning all lobbying of the federal government by for-profit interests, including companies, sectoral organizations, and think tanks, so the government once again works for ordinary people and the societal interest. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next is the Green Party candidate, Angela Keller Herzog. Go ahead.
Hi. The day that I decided to run was on December 18th last year. That was the day that the Liberal government announced another $1.6 billion in subsidies for the oil and gas sector, pouring fuel on the fire. We are going in the wrong direction and we need to change course on the climate. Under the Liberals, Canadian emissions are rising, fossil fuel subsidies are massively increasing, and there is much talk and very little effective action. I'm a small business owner. I've worked as an economist to fight corruption and reduce poverty around the world, and here locally as a climate leader. Going door to door, I've heard from you that you're afraid of our destabilized climate, that you want good jobs for youth and better care for families and seniors. We have to listen. As your member of Parliament, I will fight for healthy people, a healthy economy, and a healthy climate.
All right, thank you. Next is Stuart Ryan from the Communist Party of Canada. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. I'd like to acknowledge that we're on unceded and surrendered Algonquin land. My name is Stuart Ryan, and I'm the candidate for the Communist Party in Ottawa Centre. I've lived in the riding for 40 years and worked for a QP local at Carleton University for 33 years. I've been active in the Labour International Solidarity and Peace movements, and I'm currently co-chair of the Ottawa Health Coalition. On September 27th, thousands and thousands of people from Ottawa and Gatineau filled the streets demanding action to stop climate change, which has the potential to threaten the planet. As Greta Thunberg says, we act like the world is on fire because it is. Our party has an electoral program that puts people and nature before profit. To combat climate change, we have a 10-point program which includes nationalizing the energy industry so that technological change can really happen.
All right, thank you. Next is the Liberal Party candidate, Catherine Mckenna. Go ahead.
In 2015, you took a chance on me as a rookie candidate. I'm reapplying for the job. In the last 4 years, I've worked hard to deliver on all the promises I made in my local platform. From the Flora footbridge, the LRT, the new super library, investments in affordable housing and jobs for students. But this election isn't just about Ottawa Centre. It's about the future of our country. Liberal Party, we have an ambitious and practical climate plan. We've lifted almost 1 million Canadians out of poverty. We have the first national housing strategy, and we have the lowest unemployment rate in 4 decades. If the Conservatives win, all this progress will be lost. Andrew Shearer has said the first thing he will do is rip up our climate plan. Conservatives have no plan for the environment, no plan for the economy. I hope that I can rely on your support again.
All right, thank you. Next up is Corrine Corcoran, who is with the Libertarian Party of Canada. Go ahead.
My name is Corrine Corcoran, and I represent the Libertarian Party of Canada. I'm disturbed by the lack of accountability within our governments and the blatant lack of respect of taxpayer dollars. Partisan politics has reached a peak, and respectful dialogue between opposing sides no longer exists. I see Canada as a family, albeit a dysfunctional one, that needs a vision to hold us together. This has been lacking for decades and has led us to be very narrow-minded in how we support the issues. When one part of the country hurts, we all hurt. Today you're going to hear many promises that will cost a lot of your money with no guarantees of successful implementation. Ask yourself 2 questions when a new program or initiative is proposed. Is this needed, and is the government the best option for providing this service? The Libertarian Party of Canada doesn't think the government should have advantages over the private sector. The Libertarian Party is offering the kind of change this election that this country needs to make it a stronger family.
That's time. Thank you. Finally, the NDP candidate, Emily Taman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. I'll start by acknowledging that this debate is taking place on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I'm concerned about our democracy. I'm concerned when the Liberal government buys a pipeline the day after Parliament declares a climate emergency. And I'm more than concerned, I feel betrayed even by Justin Trudeau's broken promise to change our electoral system to one where every vote counts. We need to put principles back into politics. We need to stop subsidizing big polluters and start investing in renewable energy on a massive scale. We need to do more than simply assert that housing is a human right, but actually give effect to that right by building affordable homes. In Ottawa Centre, we've seen this kind of leadership in action. New Democrats, Ed Broadbent and Paul Dewar never wavered in their commitment to a more just and equal society. So let's build on their legacy and work together for climate, economic, and social justice. I look forward to today's discussion.
All right, thank you. Thank you to all the candidates for your opening statements. We're going to move into the debates now, and I will start with a question to Marilee Sevilla of the People's Party of Canada. Your party is promising to balance the budget within 2 years. How are you going to do that without making a whole bunch of cuts to things like healthcare and education?
Well, when it comes to balancing the budget in 2 years, it is possible. The Liberal former leader John Chrétien did it with a $4 billion surplus. And so what we're doing, we understand that it is risky, that some services will get cut, but at the same time, we're also saying, let's cut corporate welfare. Let's put an end to helping these billion-dollar companies get money from the government and take that back, because there's a lot of money going to waste. So by doing that, we're putting more into the services and balancing a budget, because if we don't balance a budget, we're just adding to more taxes, and Canadians cannot be taxed anymore. It is just going to bury them. So we're saying balance the budget first, then we can work on more services for Canadians.
Okay, it's open to everyone now on the subject of government finances.
It's not a practical way of going about things. The Conservative plan is to ensure that we have adequate transfers for important priorities like health, like post-secondary education. We need to move towards balancing the budget. We'll do it progressively over time, but in a responsible manner, so that services and security for Canadians are ensured. There's certainly room for less waste in government. The Liberals have added a considerable amount of debt and deficit to the backs of current taxpayers and well into the future, onto future generations. So we definitely need to start controlling debt and deficits, but we need to do it in a very responsible manner, and that's the way the Conservatives will proceed.
The Green Party quite agrees with Marilee and Carol here that fiscal responsibility is important. We have had serious and ongoing conversations with the Parliamentary Budget Office for longer than anyone else, and have more components of our platform fully costed than any other party. But we also recognize that we need to invest in the future, we need to spend wisely, and we need to make sure we not only keep an eye on the money budget of this country, but also the ecological budget.
I think, though, that the problem is too often when we're having these discussions, we're almost offered a choice between deficits on the one hand and austerity on the other. And what, in our view, New Democrats feel it's not a spending problem that we have, it's a revenue problem. And our vision is for a system that actually asks the wealthiest among us to pay their fair share. We're talking about imposing a wealth tax on individuals with net worths over $20 million, and looking at the many ways in which our tax system is failing by losing all kinds of money to offshore tax havens, to tax loopholes that by design are depriving our public coffers of much needed revenues to fund public services. And so I think sometimes we're presented with this false dichotomy, but what we really need to be looking at is, what is it that we need in order to empower Canadians to live in dignity and in comfort? And how can we go about ensuring that we're getting those resources that are needed to fund those services?
We believe that the Liberal Party has demonstrated that you can be fiscally responsible. You can be fiscally responsible at the same time creating jobs, improving lives of Canadians. If you look at what we've achieved in the past 4 years, that we've been able to create more than 1 million jobs with Canadians, that we're at the lowest unemployment rate in 4 decades. We've also raised 1 million people out of poverty, and at the same time we have an ambitious and practical climate plan. That's how you move forward with Canadians. When you look at Conservatives, we can remember Stephen Harper. What did he run? 6 deficits. 6 deficits in a row, and we can see what provincial Conservatives are doing, cutting programs that are hurting Canadians.
Taxpayers now pay $27 billion in interest charges. That's unproductive money that could be used to better fund important priorities, that could be used to fund emerging priorities. The Liberals have burdened future generations with that debt. They talk about raising kids out of poverty at the same time as they're burdening those same kids with federal debt that is mortgaging the future.
The largest debt that will be left to children is inaction on climate change. So the Conservatives have no climate plan. They don't seem to understand that they have no plan for a sustainable future, but no plan for the economy. There's a $26 trillion economic loss.
Let's stop there and let's hear from some of the people who haven't spoken yet. Stuart, Ryan, go ahead.
Thank you. I agree that there's a revenue problem. And there used to be 2 taxpayers, and now there's only 1, and that's the people. We would double corporate tax rates, and tax the wealthy on capital gains tax, and put people first. We cut income tax for people under $40,000. You say there's more jobs, but they're part-time jobs. They're not full-time jobs. We would have full-time jobs of 32 hours with no loss in pay.
Okay.
Successive Liberal and Conservative governments have crowed about their public finance management credentials. Have a look at the reality that's affecting you out there. Household debt is currently 174% of gross income. The personal savings rate has now fallen to 1.7% from an all-time high of 21% in 1982. And the most telling statistic is that from 2015 to 2016, Canadians paid $145 billion in tax, while corporations only paid $41 billion. This is not just.
And if I could add there as well, I think we have to be really careful when we're looking at data points about the economy. There's no question the economy's been growing, but let's ask ourselves, who's sharing in that prosperity? Because we've seen wealth being concentrated, increasingly in fewer and fewer hands. We have 2 billionaires in our country who've amassed as much wealth as 11 million of us combined. And so simply pointing to data points without actually looking at the lived experience of Canadians, of people here in Ottawa Centre, who are struggling to find affordable housing, who are struggling to pay for their medications, they are looking to a government who is going to address their needs by bringing in pharmacare, dental care, public transit, free public transit, the programs that will allow people to actually thrive and prosper in the grassroots.
I absolutely agree with that, and that's what we've been doing. We've raised 300,000 children out of poverty. There's actually 12,000 children in Ottawa Centre who are being helped through the Canada Child Benefit. We've made historic investments in public transportation and green infrastructure, in affordable housing. The last election, the other major parties were going to balance the budget. They were not going to make those investments in Canadians. That if you look at the job rate, lowest unemployment rate in 4 decades, but in Ottawa Centre, we've been able to double the jobs for students, making a real impact on the lives of students.
Okay, that's time. Thank you, everyone. That's time. We'll go back to Marilee Sevilla. I asked you the question, so you get the final 30 seconds.
4 years ago, the Liberal government stood here and said we were going to balance a budget, we were going to address the budget, and now they're saying it's the climate. The People's Party is looking to balance the budget within 2 years, within our 4-year mandate, not 5, not 10. We're looking to balance the budget now because that is important. Once we balance the budget, we will gain our surpluses. And we're saying we need to stop the debt from growing. So we're focusing on Canadians by tackling our debt. You can't get ahead in life, government or not, with debt.
Okay, thank you. The next question is for Conservative candidate Carol Clemenhagen. Andrew Shearer has attacked Justin Trudeau on issues arising about his honesty and credibility. But recently there have been revelations about Andrew Shearer, including about his credentials in the private sector and his dual citizenship. So why should Canadians trust Andrew Shearer?
Mr. Shearer has been extremely upfront and direct. His father is an American, and we joke around and say we're not going to hold that against him. A lot of people have dual citizenship. He's explained it was something that was of no significance to him. I think when we're talking about lack of transparency and concerns about ethics, the Liberals have been found by the Independent Ethics Commissioner as having tried to inappropriately influence an Attorney General of the country for partisan reasons. This is a serious contravention of our values,
okay.
And I think that's what we should be talking about.
So when we look at what happened with Andrew Shearer, I think that we didn't get the truth, that he attacked others for holding dual citizenship while he hid that he has American citizenship.
He
He pretended that he had credentials
it
as an
wasn't hidden.
insurance
Everyone
broker,
knew.
but actually, it seems that he just filed papers for a few months before he got into politics.
It was a
But this is the
non-issue.
challenge with conservatives. They
non-issue.
don't want to tell you the truth. They are going to do the cuts that we have seen Doug Ford do.
Talk about
The cuts
not telling
to
the truth.
healthcare,
The
the cuts to safe
independent
injection
ethics
sites,
commissioner
the cuts
found
to
Okay,
that
one
you
at a
had
time,
to
please.
intervene the
The cuts
Conflict
that are
of
going
Interest
to-
Act.
Let's let one person finish, and then before someone else starts speaking, who else wants to jump in here? Go ahead.
I think that it's pretty clear that Elizabeth May is the one leader in Parliament that can be counted on to hold the government fully accountable, who has integrity, and who will not lose her sense of direction and break her promises. Elizabeth May has been in the House for 2 terms. She's been voted as the hardest working parliamentarian and also the best parliamentarian for several years in a row.
And if I could add there, I think, with the greatest respect to Catherine McKenna, one of the most direct promises that was repeated over and over again, both by you personally, Catherine, and by Justin Trudeau, was that 2015 would be the last first past the post election. That promise was so cynically broken once the Liberals obtained their false majority. And to stand up here now and point fingers at Andrew Shearer after you directly, and this is not a promise, this is not a case of circumstances changed other than you getting elected with a majority. This is a case of a failure of leadership, a lack of commitment, and I think it speaks volumes about the credibility of every single promise that you're putting forward in this election today.
Well, so I'd like to be clear.
I think we're missing kind of the bigger picture here. We're pointing to an American citizenship. And I think what's happening is that we're feeding into an anti-American sentiment that is growing across this country. We have our news every night is leading with Trump stories. I think it's dangerous for our country to have built up this kind of animosity towards our largest trading partner. We rely on the U.S., like it or not. The U.S. is huge for this country. It's huge for our economy. It's huge for our small businesses. It's huge for the businesses along the border. And I think that by picking on this as the item that they want to, the hill they want to die on against Andrew Shearer, it's lacking imagination, first of all, and it's really just trying to build up more of that anti-American sentiment in this country that I think needs to end, or else we're really going to be in trouble.
They're keeping children in cages.
Delving into these kind of ad hominem attacks reduces Canadian politics to a sad and squalid spectacle. The reality is we should be looking at far more significant issues right now, and one of which I want to mention is that in Canada, over 70% of Canada's prairie grasslands have been lost. That's an amount larger than the Amazon rainforest has lost in the equivalent period of time. We need to focus on issues here.
That's a very important point. And in terms of climate action, one of the real disappointments for all Canadians that we all share in is the failure of the Liberal government to move forward quicker and more effectively to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We are now 20%. We are 20% above 2020 targets.
Again, one at a time, please.
Auditors General from the provincial level, federal level have identified that the Liberal plans are not anywhere near on track to get us close to 2030. This is an extremely important and disappointing conclusion. So when the Liberals come out and say, don't worry about it, we haven't met the 2020 targets, we're not going to meet 2030, but you know what, we're going to be net zero by 2050. That is cynicism of the highest order. We need to be reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We need to be working with the provinces across sectors. The minister, unfortunately, has failed significantly in her prime responsibility, which was to work collaboratively with provinces and territories to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. She has failed significantly in that role.
Okay.
So I think it actually is really important to clear the record here. It was the Conservatives who were the only party in government, in Parliament, who voted against declaring a climate emergency and meeting our Paris Agreement targets based on the science.
Okay, again,
we
one at a
have
time,
an
please.
ambitious
Excuse me,
and
one at a time,
practical
please.
climate plan. So I want to ask you, Carol, if you care so much about climate change, you care about ambition, then why are you standing with a party where Andrew Shearer said the first thing he will do is cancel our price on pollution, join Doug Ford and Jason Basin County and making it free to pollute, and also cancel our better rules for major projects to make sure we have a climate lens.
Paris targets,
That there is no plan by the Conservatives.
Established by the previous Conservative government. I'll say it again. The Paris targets were established by the previous Conservative
and you
government.
did nothing to reach
Our
them.
plan,
You went in the
our
wrong
plan
direction
is-
for a
is
decade. There
focused
is
on
no conservative
using
climate
incentives,
Kind of
practical
Okay,
approaches
all right, let's
to
pause.
reduce
Let's
greenhouse
pause.
gas
There's a couple of
emissions.
people who haven't had a chance to speak yet. Stuart, Ryan, go ahead.
Thank you. The question about Andrew Shearer is answered by he thanked Stephen Harper when he got won the leadership. And Catherine's right. There is no plan from the Conservatives on the economy. But then Trudeau, proportional representation gone, and he's also gave SNC, tried to get SNC a bailout, through the deferred prosecution agreement.
Okay. Angela, I'm going to let you have a couple of seconds here because you haven't had much of a chance to speak yet on this topic. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. It's very clear that Canadians are looking for the politicians of this country to also work together to find solutions forward and not just to attack each other and destroy what the previous government has created in a never-ending series of not addressing the real problems.
Okay.
Climate change is huge. Elizabeth May has called for a wartime-like cabinet where all
We are
parties
going to come back to the
are
issue of
represented.
climate change, so I'll jump in there. We'll come back to that with a subsequent question. But Carol Clement-Hagan, you I directed the question to you originally, so you get the last 30 seconds here.
I think it's very important that we move forward quickly and effectively on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So the Conservative plan does just that. We focus on incentives, we focus on technology, we focus on driving Canadian technology to reduce greenhouse gas emissions forward as quickly as possible. Again, we need to collaborate across the provinces and territories. They're going to be involved in doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of delivering
that's
reductions.
time. Thank you. Next question is for Angela Keller-Herzog, the Green Party candidate. Let's talk about bridges and transportation in Ottawa. Should there be another bridge between Ottawa and Gatineau? And also, would you put money toward turning the Prince of Wales Bridge, which is in Ottawa Centre, into a pedestrian and cycling link? Would you put federal money towards that? Go ahead.
Thank you for that question. The transportation sector is one of the sectors that accounts for a quarter and rising share of greenhouse gas emissions. So this epic problem that is facing us also calls for epic solutions. And in my vision for our local public transit, we should electrify the LRT, with the south line of which currently looks at diesel engines. We should move that to electric. We should have electric buses. We should have the interprovincial bridge not just be there for active transportation, but also have an electric train link. This is a brilliant opportunity to have an affordable and efficient public transit system which competes with the car successfully.
It's open to everyone now on this topic.
I think there's a huge opportunity to rethink how we have transportation in the National Capital Region. We need to be looking at interprovincial transportation. People live, work, play on both sides of the river in Quebec and Gatineau. So yes, we need to look at bridges at Sixth Crossing, but we also need to be making sure that we have better public transit linking both sides. I committed that if I'm re-elected, I will secure federal funds so that we can reopen the Prince of Wales Bridge. It makes no sense that it's closed right now. Certainly in the short term, it should be open for people to cycle and to walk across so they can get to work, so they can get to both sides to play. But I think more broadly, we've made the historic investments in LRT, largest reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in the city's history, but people are very excited. When I was on LRT with them, people were thrilled. We're making the investments the Gatineau side, and now we need to figure out if we're going to be the greenest capital in the world, which is certainly my ambition for Ottawa, we need to figure out how do we get people around in good public transportation linking both sides of Ottawa and Gatineau.
It's interesting that we talk about public transportation considering the light rail was over a year delayed, billions of dollars over, and there's still technical issues. Well, I guess it has to come down to the fact that SNC didn't pass it, but they were assigned the task of doing the project.
We need to move forward quickly for interprovincial transit linkages. The Conservative government commits to funding all the approved infrastructure projects that are on the books at the moment, and to move forward quickly with provincial and municipal partners to invest in further infrastructure. It has to go beyond cycling links. We really do need to harmonize transit between Ottawa and Gatineau so that people can get to work quickly and get home again quickly. So in our infrastructure plan, we'll prioritize investments that will improve or lessen commute times.
If there's one thing I think that we've seen in the city of Ottawa, and probably about the last 10, 12 years, is this city in particular cannot build bridges. I lived in Riverside South for about 8 years. There was a bridge that was supposed to be tied to the LRT that was also supposed to be part of the design of that entire community. And when that LRT extension was canceled, the bridge that went with it was canceled as well. It took years to get back into the planning stages for that bridge without a train link on it. It was over budget again. It was late getting done. We also saw it with the footbridge over the Airport Parkway, where they had to completely rebuild it because something was wrong with the concrete. I question the government's ability to be able to do these things on their own. I think we need to be looking at private and public collaboration to do these things, to get these plans going. I look at Lansdowne Park and how quickly that was put together. I know that's single source, it wasn't, but now that it's built, look how great it is. Everybody is loving it there. I remember back in the days of the exhibition and the Glebe residents didn't like the noise and all that. I'm thinking that they're pretty much liking what they've got now.
We have just seen a widening of the Queensway. This is a massive subsidy of single occupant vehicle car use. This is a problem that's endemic. Just in front of the studio on Richmond Road, go out there in the morning and look at how many single occupant vehicles are running up and down the roads all day. We need a new system that captures the real costs of commuting and that plows the money that we might raise through additional taxes into collective forms of common transportation, more rail, more transit, more buses to get people out of their vehicles.
If I could jump in, Mark, sorry. Absolutely extending and expanding our public transit infrastructure has to be a top priority. I'd like a proper accounting of whether and when the Prince of Wales Bridge could be used for transit before moving ahead with active transit. I think it's important. I think we need to make sure that people have many modes through which they can get around in our city. But I think the proper expansion of our public transit has to be a priority. If it's the case that the Prince of Wales Bridge, for whatever reason, is not suitable for that, then absolutely I think we need to look at another bridge. But I just want to make sure that we're not acting precipitously in writing off the Prince of Wales Bridge as a transit link, and asking the question as to whether the types of massive investments in transit that New Democrats are talking about could actually accelerate LRT expansion, thereby bringing us back to the Prince of Wales as a potential important transit link.
I'd like to say I think the Prince of Wales Bridge should be opened. I thought there was a press conference with the mayors of both cities for that just a month ago. On the question of private infrastructure into building this thing, it was SNC-Lavalin was the Rideau Transit Group, and they took a year. They were the ones who were wait, and 300 bus drivers have lost their jobs waiting for that, and I agree in supporting publicly owned electric public transit.
Okay. Let's wrap up there. Angela Keller Herzog, I asked you the question, so you get another 30 seconds on this.
Thank you very much. This discussion of public transit is an excellent opportunity to talk about a part of the new economy that we need to invest in and that can have broad-based benefits. I'm a member of Free Transit Ottawa, and the viewers may remember a free transit challenge this past February when there was ice and snow and we had councillors take public transit. We clearly saw that public transit, especially the bus system in Ottawa, is not working conveniently. Fares keep rising. Ridership is falling. We need to do something about that.
All right, thank you. Next question is for Liberal candidate Catherine McKenna. How can you march in climate strikes and talk about meeting our emissions targets and at the same time buy a pipeline and promise to build a pipeline? Why isn't that, as your opponents suggest, hypocrisy?
So I think this is a really good question. People ask me this, and I think there's really important points. So we are the first government to have an ambitious and practical climate plan. We have a leading environmentalist running for us in Quebec, world leading, and he said, find another government that's done more in 4 years than our government. And he's running for us because he wants us to do more. I want us to do more. But the thing is, we agree with the NDP and the Greens. We need to be net zero by 2050, but we will always keep people at the heart of our plan. So the twinning of the existing Trans Mountain Pipeline was made in the context of our climate plan. Rachel Notley, an NDP premier, put a hard cap on emissions from the oil sands, and every dollar from that project is going to a cleaner future.
Okay.
But we need to be worried about people and jobs.
Rachel Notley famously said that as she was pulling Alberta out of the Liberal climate plan, that it wasn't worth the paper it was written on. So we have a situation where the Liberals are incapable of working with the provinces. Alberta has a great deal of concern about the direction that the Liberal government has taken. Bill C-69, for example, has created a situation where Alberta, one of the major provinces contributing to the economic prosperity of the country, feels alienated. That's down to the Liberals. That is down to the Liberal government.
I personally spent 1 year negotiating with provinces and territories, and we applauded Rachel Notley's leadership. While she was abandoned by the NDP, we applauded her because she did very hard things. But look what's happening now. We now have Andrew Shearer, who has a climate plan that isn't worth the paper it's
again,
written
one at a time,
on.
please.
It was written by oil lobbyists and would mean unlimited pipelines. But for those people who are listening who are really wondering, that plan is
one at a time, please. I'm sorry.
Introduced 108
We have lots of time. We have lots of time for everybody to speak.
Carol, I think there's one thing that is important, that you said that my job is to work with provinces and territories. No, my job as environment minister is to tackle climate change with Canadians. Doug Ford took us to court.
You can't even get along with the province. Our whole country is based on the principle of cooperation. We're a federation. We are a federation. It's based on the principle of cooperation.
Again, when you're both talking at the same time, no one can hear either of you.
We have put a price on pollution in Ontario because Doug Ford made it free to pollute, but we gave the money back. So a family of four would receive $307. We need to take ambitious action on climate change. I wish we had conservative politicians that were from the era of Brian Mulroney, because he believed in a price on pollution, and that's what he used to tackle acid rain. But sadly, what is at stake at this election is a conservative party that would get rid of all of
I'm going to jump in to give other people the opportunity to speak about this now. So I'm going to jump in. Go ahead, Angela Keller Herzog.
There's something very common to the position of the Conservatives and the Liberals. Both of them think that they can somehow dupe Canadians to not understand that you cannot be aiming for net carbon zero in the Canadian economy and not transition out of fossil fuels, not put that sector to bed. So Justin Trudeau made about 2 years ago one comment about transitioning out, and he immediately reversed his statements, I think maybe 15 minutes later. It's incredible. But I think that Canadians are smarter than that. If we're going to be reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, getting to net carbon zero, that means that the oil sands cannot be expanding, but we need to put them to bed, we need to transition out, we need to find jobs for the workers in that sector. The renewable energy sector is far more labor intensive than the capital intensive oil, gas, and mining sector. Therefore, all the fear mongering about all the job losses are exaggerated, and our fear in the Green Party is for our ambitious transition plan called Mission Possible, we'll be experiencing labor shortages in the renewable energy sector, in home energy, retrofitting, etc.
I think this is why, New Democrats are talking about working people and Indigenous people being on the front lines of the transition off fossil fuels. I think to suggest that we're going to expand our fossil fuel infrastructure building new infrastructure that's going to be good 50 years into the future is completely missing the point about the type of accelerated transition that is needed for us to meet our climate goals, and also, very importantly, for Canada to be able to stand as a credible leader internationally in the fight against climate change. As long as we keep doubling down on fossil fuels, increasing our fossil fuel infrastructure and output, how are we going to have a credible voice asking other countries to give things up, asking other countries to make sacrifices when we're not prepared to do the same here at home? And it's not a given that you can't support working people through a transition without expanding that infrastructure. That's why we're looking at things like taxation, how we can generate the revenues that we need to make sure that no one's left behind. Because it is going to be disruptive, there's no question about it, but the status quo is not tenable, and we can't stay on this path, or we are going to be closer and closer to climate catastrophe. We've accepted that we're in a climate emergency. We need to start acting like it.
We are acting like it.
Okay.
We have
I'm a
Chris
former
Jones.
aide to a former federal Minister of the Environment who led the charge on acid rain. And he had the courage and the gumption to speak truth to power. Unfortunately, the Paris Climate Agreement talks are predicated on the idea that we can have parallel economic growth and still somehow manage to reduce our emissions. This is a fiction. It's not possible. We need to look very carefully at the future, as the young people I marched with in the streets last week who all recognize that the current system is not sustainable, and we need to make some fundamental changes to it.
We can make fundamental changes. At the same time, we can make sure that people have jobs. That's exactly what we're doing. Our climate plan has been shown by experts to create 500,000 jobs by 2030. We have an ambitious plan that puts people at the heart of it. We have a just transition for coal workers because we're phasing out coal. We put a price on pollution, we're giving money back so life is more affordable. We're making historic
Catherine McKenna, I'm going to jump in because you
of
get the last 30 seconds anyway, so let's...
The energy sector accounts for 11% of our GDP. 23% of our exports, of Canadian exports, are from the oil and gas.
Okay.
So the transition
That's
must
time.
be very gradual.
Thank you.
Certainly, but it's a transition.
All right,
but
thank
we
you.
need
That's
to
time.
recognize
We
the
go back to
reality.
Catherine McKenna now, and you have 30 seconds to wrap up on this topic.
Look, we have an ambitious and practical climate plan. Experts have shown that we have a plan, that it's working, and we are the only party that actually shows how you can get it done while bringing people together. And so sadly, we have conservative politicians from Doug Ford to Andrew Shearer who don't understand the costs of climate change that we're paying all right now. We've seen it with the floods here, once in 100-year floods every few years, and they would cancel everything. This is what is at stake at this election. All the progress we have made on climate change would be gone.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to a question now for NDP candidate Emily Taman, and let's talk about the local riding and a big piece of real estate in the local riding. What is your vision for LeBreton Flats?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question, Mark, because I've been hearing a lot from people about the anxieties they have about the housing crisis in Ottawa. And looking at LeBreton Flats, federal land, this is an enormous opportunity, and we cannot squander it by simply building luxury condos and shiny baubles. We need to not only ensure large amounts of affordable housing, but we're advocating for community benefits agreements. Those would be binding contracts between developers and the community to ensure that in addition to affordable housing, we also have appropriate amenities, including green space, including sustainable work opportunities. We can build a thriving mixed income community in LeBreton Flats, and this is a huge priority for me and something I'd be prepared to show leadership on.
Okay, it's open to everyone, not just on LeBreton Flats, but on your vision for the capital, if you want to go there, or we can focus on LeBreton Flats. Go
I
ahead.
would like to add perspective on what's going on in LeBreton Flats. Currently, this land belongs to the NCC. It is public land, which means it belongs to the people of Canada. What is being proposed is called monetization, but it's actually just privatization. Yeah. So what we had is two millionaires fighting about how they could make more money from which proposal, and they didn't solve the dispute because there wasn't enough wealth generated for them. What I would propose is that some of that land should go into a public trust. And we know that there is a housing crisis, an affordability crisis, and that land should be accessed by nonprofits, by co-op housing, by providers of supportive housing. And we should, if we've identified this crisis and we have the resources to address it, why not make that fit Why give it to the private sector and have millionaires have these fights?
I'd like to
I'd
see.
like to
I'd like to see the
intervene here,
NCC become much more results focused and competent. On the subject of LeBreton Flats, we need the NCC and the city as in general, and all of us, to come up with a vision that is worthy of the national capital, a real sense of place. The potential is there. Unfortunately, with the unraveling of Rendezvous Le Breton, we saw our minister, the only minister in cabinet representing Ottawa, was absent from the discussion. She might have helped salvage that deal. We'll never know because she was completely oblivious to what was happening.
I'd actually like to have a chance to respond to that because that's completely not true.
What are we doing
but what
for
is the
LeBreton
vision?
Flats?
Catherine
We
Mckenna
need to
speaking
move,
now.
We need to move forward
Carol
with a
Clement-Hagan,
vision
I'm
that's
gonna
worthy
jump in
of the
because-
national capital.
All right, go ahead, Catherine
So
McKenna.
what I hear, and I knock on doors all the time, what I hear from people is they want LeBreton Flats to be an incredible place for living, working, and playing. I absolutely agree with Emily and Angela that there needs to be a large component of affordable housing. But what else do we need? Well, I was able to get the commitment for a super library, which is in LeBreton Flats. We now have LRT there. And what do we know works? Well, we know music works. So I think we should have an amazing music venue. I've also heard people talk about recreation facilities. Get people there so that they can enjoy the place. Also, the idea that you would have local businesses headquartered there. I've talked about the importance of Bayview expansion. If I'm reelected, then I will get the funds to expand Bayview. But these are companies that could be located there. But the biggest thing I will promise if I'm reelected is I will make sure we get it done and we get it right.
I've heard this debate, I've been in a few elections, and we've always had this question of LeBreton Flats. There's always been promise of mixed income housing there. Now we have 900 Albert Street saying, no, we don't want them there. We'll give $6 million for social housing elsewhere. And the mayor said, okay, it's not in the writing. Catherine Mckenna asked for it being, McKinney, excuse me, asked for it being in the writing, and it's not. I mean, we should have social housing built there that used to be a working class neighborhood, and it's gone. Everyone wants to build hockey arenas, war museums, and stuff there. It's supposed to be for the people.
Remaining open green space near the Parliament buildings. It behooves us to think very carefully about creating a sense of place. If you think about Central Park in New York or Hyde Park in London, there's a possibility of world-class cities having a sense of place within the urban center that becomes emblematic in some ways. That's what we're looking for LeBreton Flats, and I think the private sector and the public sector clearly need to be working together towards that vision that is worthy of the nation's capital.
I would like to raise an
I'm
additional.
going to ask Corrine Corcoran to speak because I know she's been trying to get in.
I would like to see the mixed use. I'd like to see private public collaboration on this. A question I have, if we're in the climate crisis that everybody is suggesting, then why isn't it covered in solar panels right now? Why don't we have a wind farm there? Why do we keep pushing the climate problems out to our rural residents? We look at this as a gold mine of this is going to be tax dollars coming in, and it's going to be this wonderful place for all of us to enjoy music and business and all that stuff. But we've got this climate crisis that we're talking about, and we have this giant piece of land, and we're not thinking about what we can do about that. So I'd like to actually ask the candidates who are pushing for that, why do we keep pushing those problems out to our rural residents?
Look, I think that's a good point, and district heating is a huge opportunity. I think, of course, it has to be super energy efficient. I've committed that the Ottawa Public Library, we will make it sure that it is net zero, super energy efficient, and there's a great opportunity with green space. I've just made an announcement today, if re-elected, I would work with the city to increase our tree canopy. So you could do that in places like LeBreton, where it's on the river. It's an incredible piece of land.
We're going to have to stop there. Let's go back to Emily Tammon. You have 30 seconds to wrap up on this.
So there's no question that sustainability has to play a big role in whatever we do with LeBreton Flats. I also just want to comment about the library. I was one of the biggest champions for the Central Library. And Catherine, again, with respect, You did not stand with the community when we were fighting to keep that library in the core of downtown. Centertown is losing its library as a result of the location that was chosen for LeBreton Flats. And my understanding is that the federal money is for the library and archives portion and not the library. So I think we could have done a lot better on that.
Okay. That wraps up the debate portion of our telecast. So we're going to move to the closing statements now. Again, each candidate will have 1 minute to speak to you, and we'll do those in the reverse order of the opening statements, which means we will begin with Emily Tamman, the NDP candidate. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. So I just want to ask, what kind of country do we want? Do we want to live in a country where 2 billionaires, as I've said, amass as much wealth as 11 million of us combined, while every night in our city, people are sleeping on the streets? Do we want to live in a country where big polluters get corporate welfare as a reward for bringing us closer to climate catastrophe? Do we want a country with an electoral system that gives parties false majorities, or one where every vote counts? So let's aim higher than just better than the Conservatives. We can give everyone a roof over their heads, the health coverage they need, and clean air to breathe, if we insist that the ultra-rich in this country pay their fair share. If our ideas don't offend fossil fuel executives, billionaires, and corporate developers, then we are failing to act with the urgency this moment demands. Let's have the courage to demand better. Let's vote to put people and our planet first. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is Corrine Corcoran from the Libertarian Party of Canada.
Canadian politics is broken. We are faced with leaders this election who have already committed to not working together. We are hearing promises that make many of us shake our heads in disbelief that these words are coming from the people who want to lead this country. It is time to get ego out of politics and start running this country with leaders who care about a future where everyone works towards a common goal of encouraging Canadians to be imaginative, inspired, and innovative. Governments should have a minimal presence in our lives, not control it. We are many generations deep into a collective mindset that thinks the government will solve all of our problems. Well, if that's the case, why do we still have so many problems? We see real problems solved every day when regular people take it upon themselves to solve them. Let's bring the pioneering spirit back. Let's make Canada stronger by getting government out of the way and empowering individuals.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Catherine Mckenna, the Liberal candidate. Go ahead.
My promise to you is to work hard every single day about the issues you care about, whether it's climate change, a more affordable life for you and your family, protecting diversity, reproductive freedom. You know where I stand on these issues. I've also delivered on my campaign promises locally, whether it's the Floral Footbridge, the light rail transit, or more jobs for students. I'm also very proud of our government's record. We have the lowest unemployment rate in 4 decades. We've raised 1 million people out of poverty, including 300,000 children. That's helping 12,000 children right here in Ottawa Centre. And we have an ambitious and practical climate plan. But let's not kid ourselves. If the Conservatives win, all of that progress will be lost. As Election Day nears and you're thinking about your choices, I think it becomes clear. It's between a Liberal government that is focused on you, improving lives, tackling climate change, promoting diversity, and a Conservative government that would take that all away. The stakes could not be higher.
All right, thank you. Next up, Stuart Ryan from the Communist Party of Canada.
The Communist Party puts people and nature before profit. We call for an economy of full-time jobs with 32 hours per week with no loss of pay. We call for full pensions at age 60. We would expand public Medicare with pharmacare, dental care, vision care, and mental health. We call for 1 million social housing units to be built over the next 4 years. To pay for these programs, we would double the corporate tax rate, raise the capital gains tax, and close tax loopholes and deferred corporate taxes. We would cut defense spending by 75% and use the money to fund needed social programs. We need to pull out of NATO and NORAD and stop following the dictates of U.S. threats of war, be it in Iran, Syria, Venezuela, Ukraine, or Korea. What we need is a movement that will support policies that put people's needs and natures first. Our movement that will organize for far-reaching economic power regardless whatever
That's time.
government's in power.
Angela Keller Herzog is the Green Party candidate. Go ahead.
Hi. In Ottawa Centre, do you really believe that the choice is between the Liberals and the Conservatives? That we have to be afraid of the Conservatives? Ottawa Centre has not voted Conservative in over 40 years. As a Canadian, as a global citizen, as an economist, as a mother, I choose Green because the Green Party is the only party with a target, a plan, and a roadmap to address urgent climate action. 1 million Canadians stepped up for the climate strike last Friday, demanding action now for climate and for social justice. Join me and those who want real action on climate, who want a renewed social contract, and who want to honor our commitment to Indigenous reconciliation. Elizabeth May stands for accountability, integrity, and she will not break her promises. We need more Greens in Parliament. Every single vote for the Greens in Ottawa Centre sends a clear and strong
Next up
signal.
is an independent candidate, Chris Jones. Go ahead.
Global warming is a fact. There are significant costs and damages associated with modern production and consumption, and they have not been adequately quantified. For example, deforestation, soil erosion, loss of prairie grasslands, air pollution, heavy metal infiltration, habitat destruction, and biodiversity loss. Many corporate and commercial entities here in Canada and around the world have chosen not to value these various damages, and therefore it follows that the market system is unable to properly reflect the full costs of production. These costs are socialized and pushed off the books of private entities and onto the commons, the natural environment, future generations, and especially here in Canada, Aboriginal peoples. This cannot be permitted to continue. The public interest and the survival of other species is at risk. Please vote independently in this election.
Okay, thank you. Carol Clement-Hagan is the Conservative candidate. You have 1 minute as well.
We know that 49% of all government revenue comes from our income taxes. Middle-class families are already paying more under the Liberals. Can voters trust Justin Trudeau and Catherine McKenna? Based on the past 4 years, the answer is clearly no. After a solemn election promise in 2015 to balance the budget, and despite a favorable economy, the Liberals delivered 4 successive years of deficit. This year's finale topping $20 billion. Liberals conveniently overlook the burden they are loading onto the backs of future generations by mortgaging our future with debt. The choice voters will make on October 21st will come down to which party they trust to strengthen the economy, to be the most competent manager of public funds, so that we can make the wise investment in priorities like healthcare and climate action. I am asking for your vote for a competent and caring Conservative government. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Finally, Marilee Sevilla, who is representing the People's Party of Canada. Go ahead.
On October 21st, Canadians have a chance to stop the back and forth pendulum of Conservatives and Liberals. Canada and Ottawa Centre can vote for change in October, have politics done differently. The People's Party wants to put more money back in the Canadians' pockets, ensure companies stop receiving government handouts and bailouts. The People's Party of Canada is the party for Canadians. We understand that life is getting expensive, from housing, healthcare, and food, and a Liberal government or any government that refuses to acknowledge the deficits or balance a budget just means future generations will have to pay. Deficits of today are taxes of tomorrow. And if you can handle Ottawa Centre paying an extra $200, then I guess I know where you're voting. But we stand on the principles of freedom, fairness, respect, and responsibility. And if you stand for those principles too, you will vote for the People's Party October 21st. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to all the candidates for participating in our debate today. Best of luck in the remainder of the campaign. And thank you for watching. I want to remind you that Election Day is October the 21st. You can vote in advance polls during the Thanksgiving Day weekend. And a reminder that our coverage of the federal election results on Rogers TV and 1310 News begins at 9 o'clock on election night, October the 21st. I hope you can join us then. Thank you for watching.